The Cerberus Games by Keegan Long, for Kayla and Ethan, who have filled more chapters of my life than they probably realize. Part 1. Paradise Cove. Chapter 1. When I was little, my mother used to tell me all kinds of stories about storms. Thunder wasn't something to fear, she insisted. It was only God bowling with the angels, each rumble the crash of another set of pins. Lightning was heaven's camera flash whenever God decided to take a photograph of the world below. At the time, I found these explanations completely reasonable. Storms were much less frightening when heaven kept score, and the lightning meant someone up there thought the world was worth remembering. Eventually, like everyone else, I grew up. I learned that thunder didn't require a bowling league, and that lightning was considerably less personal than my mother had made it sound. Knowing the science should have made storms easier to understand, but it had never made them feel as safe. What I would have given to hear her tell one of those stories again. A violent crack of thunder answered that thought, rattling the windows of our sixth-floor apartment hard enough to pull me upright. Rain struck the glass in uneven bursts, while gray morning light filtered through the bedroom curtains, leaving me caught somewhere between whatever I had been dreaming and the room slowly returning around me. Before I was fully awake, I reached across the bed for Sam. My hand found a warm body beneath the blankets, but the thick fur beneath my fingers made it clear I had located the wrong occupant. "You've got to be kidding me," I muttered. Riley, Sam's overly loyal, mildly dramatic German shepherd, let out a low grunt and pressed closer to my side as if I were the inconvenience in this arrangement. "You are not who I was hoping for," I told her. She yawned in reply. I swore she rolled her eyes at me as well. As lightning washed the bedroom white again, the apartment disappeared for a second beneath the wider skies of Iowa. I could almost feel my mother's sweater against my cheek, and hear her assigning scores to another heavenly bowling tournament while I waited for the next crack of thunder. Back then, I had believed every word because believing her was easier than being afraid. Beside me, Riley shifted until her head rested against my leg. Her breathing remained slow and steady despite the outside storm, and somewhere between one rumble and the next, I realized mine had begun to follow the same rhythm. "Thanks," I whispered, giving her head a scratch. "I'm glad you're here with me." She flicked an ear but refused to open her eyes. The storm, clearly, was not her concern. I rolled toward the nightstand and promptly knocked one of my paperback books onto the hardwood floor. It landed with a decisive thud. "Sorry," I murmured vaguely to the fictional characters I'd just betrayed. Beneath where the book had rested a moment ago lay a folded note. I recognized the handwriting before I opened it.
"Had to leave early for work. Rain or not, the world still spins. I'll be back for dinner and help you finish packing. Love you. Sam."
I read the note twice, even though the message had not changed between readings. Of course he had been called in early. There was always something waiting for Sam. An emergency, a last-minute briefing, or an important person whose problems outranked whatever plans we had made the night before. It was difficult to stay angry when your boyfriend's job description included phrases like national security. Normal boyfriends worked 9-to-5 jobs. Mine kept a gun secured within reach of the bed and protected the President of the United States for a living. I understood why he had left, and I knew he would have stayed if the decision had truly belonged to him, but understanding it did nothing to change the empty space beside me. I folded the note along its existing crease and ran my thumb over his initials. I hadn't needed the entire morning. I would have settled for just 10 more minutes. Riley made a soft noise beside me. "I think he made coffee," I said aloud. Her ears perked. I smiled despite myself. Sam hated coffee. He claimed it smelled like burnt dirt and tasted worse, yet every morning, especially the stormy ones, he made enough for me before leaving. He never mentioned it or waited for me to thank him. The full pot was simply there, another quiet part of our routine that I had learned not to take for granted. With coffee now offering a reason to leave the bed, I swung my legs onto the floor and stood too quickly. My sock caught the edge of the rug, sending me forward before I managed to grab the nightstand. "Excellent start to the day, Anna," I muttered to myself as I straightened the rug with my foot. Riley rose with considerably more dignity and followed me into the hallway, her claws tapping against the hardwood as we headed toward the kitchen. I made it only a few steps before the open doorway of the study caught my attention and stopped me. The room sat between our bedroom and the kitchen, barely wide enough for Sam's desk and a single bookshelf. Rain had fogged the corners of the narrow window above his computer, leaving the study dim except for the occasional flash from outside. On the far wall, his acoustic guitar hung exactly where it always had. It should have been the least interesting thing in the room. Since yesterday, I had been unable to pass it without looking. The day before, I had been vacuuming the apartment and trying to leave it in some recognizable order before my trip. When the cord snagged around the guitar stand, I pulled harder instead of stopping to see what had caught, a decision that sent the instrument crashing onto the floor. I had rushed over expecting a cracked neck or broken string, but when I lifted it, something shifted inside the hollow body with a soft rattle. Sam did not store guitar picks in there, and whatever moved sounded heavier than one anyway. I should have put the guitar back and pretended I had heard nothing. Instead, I crouched beside it, tilted the body carefully, and gave it the smallest shake I could manage. A black box slid through the opening and landed against my palm. Even now, my fingers remembered the smooth edge of the box and the resistance of its small hinge. Inside had been a slender silver band with a single round diamond, nothing flashy or overdone, which made it unmistakably something Sam would choose for me. Standing in the hallway now, I stared at the guitar while my coffee waited somewhere beyond it. Sam had not asked me anything, and I had not practiced an answer, but the word had arrived the instant I saw the ring. Yes. That was what unsettled me. Not the idea of marrying him, but how little debate or time the decision required. I still had not told him what I had found. Each time I imagined admitting it, I pictured the surprise disappearing from his face before he ever had the chance to ask. So I had returned the box to the guitar, placed everything exactly as I had found it, and spent the next day pretending I did not know one of the most important questions of my life was hanging on the other side of the wall. How long had he been carrying it there? But more importantly, what was he waiting for? Riley nudged my hand, pulling me out of my thoughts. You know about it too, huh? I murmured, kneeling and wrapping my arms around her neck. She stayed perfectly still, accepting the hug without complaint. Don't tell him I know, I added. It'll be our secret, just us girls. She huffed softly. I chose to take that as a yes. In the next room, the kitchen smelled faintly of coffee and rain. The pot was still full and untouched, so I poured some into my favorite mug, added a splash of oat milk, and leaned against the counter while the storm continued outside. The thunder had softened to a low grumble now, as if even the sky were running out of things to say and do. I had taken exactly one sip when my phone rang across the counter. Not a text or one of the dozens of notifications I had been ignoring since waking up, but an actual call, at an hour when no reasonable person should have expected any type of conversation from me. The screen lit with the name, Big Bro. As the thunder faded beyond the kitchen window, I let the phone ring twice more. Ethan rarely called without a reason, and considering the time, I doubted he had woken me to discuss the weather. With my coffee still warming my hand, I answered.